Think back to 2020. The most important chart in the world was arguably the one built by a data journalist at the Financial Times. The one showing exactly how fast COVID was spreading across every single country. Governments literally used it to justify lockdowns, and hundreds of millions of people viewed it. But what programming language actually powered that chart? Or what obscure tool is quietly humming in the background of almost every FDA clinical trial right now? Well, it's not Python, and it's definitely not C++. It is a language simply called R.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack the untold story of R, which was actually created as an academic joke between two guys in a hallway in New Zealand. It's this fascinating journey of how something built purely because two professors couldn't afford software became the irreplaceable, unpaid backbone of global data. Let's trace exactly how this ultimate underdog survived corporate paywalls and the massive AI boom to quietly run the modern world.
Section 1. The chart that changed everything. Okay, let's dive right into this, because the real-world stakes of this seemingly niche, single-letter language are absolutely massive. Think about the sheer scope of its hidden impact. This isn't just some dusty academic tool. Every time a new life-saving drug gets approved by the FDA, R is right there behind the scenes, helping analyze those clinical trials. When major news organizations are forecasting an election, yeah, that's probably R. The entire infrastructure of the Human Genome Project, massive back-end data systems at Google, data journalism at the BBC, they all completely rely on it. It is wild to think that a tool originally thrown together for teaching an undergraduate statistics class on underpowered Macintosh computers has grown into this global infrastructure that literally shapes our understanding of biology, public health, and world events.
Section 2. From S to modern R. To truly understand how R conquered the data world, we have to rewind slightly to understand the technical shift that made it all possible. We got to go back to 1976, to Bell Labs.
So at Bell Labs, which is the exact same place that invented C and Unix, a statistician named John Chambers was getting incredibly frustrated. Every time he wanted to analyze data, he had to sit down and write a clunky Fortran program. So he and his team created S, which was a revolutionary language that let you talk to data interactively. It was brilliant. But in 1988, a startup licensed S and locked it behind this incredibly expensive corporate paywall called S+. We're talking thousands of dollars per seat. For a university department in Auckland, New Zealand, just trying to teach undergrads, it was completely out of reach. And that single corporate pricing choice pushed two professors, Ross Ahika and Robert Gentleman, to build their own free Macintosh-compatible version. They called it R, partly for their first names, and partly as a playful jab at S.
Which brings us to this incredible insight from Ross Ahika. They honestly thought they might, maybe sell 10 copies total. So instead, in 1995, thanks to some convincing by a colleague, they released R under the general public license. They literally just gave it away. Releasing R as free software is arguably the most consequential decision in the history of statistical computing. In fact, the guy who created the commercial S language, John Chambers, eventually watched this free competitor completely win out, and he ended up joining the R core team himself.
Section 3. The Tidyverse Usability Revolution. Now, while R was free, it wasn't exactly easy to use in those early days. It was a bit clunky. That is, until another New Zealander entered the picture and transformed it entirely.
171 million downloads. That is a staggering number, and it belongs to a single package called ggplot2. Created by Hadley Wickham during his PhD, this tool beautifully implemented what's known as the grammar of graphics. Suddenly, with just a few really elegant lines of code, R could produce absolutely stunning publication-quality charts. Wickham took a highly technical, kind of rough academic tool and turned it into an absolute powerhouse of data visualization.
Let's move to how this builds, because Wickham didn't just stop at one package. He created an entire arsenal. dplyr for seamless manipulation, tidyr for reshaping, readr for importing. By 2016, these were unified under the name Tidyverse. It made R dramatically easier to learn and, frankly, way more fun to use. Wickham's work was actually so revolutionary that he won the COPS President's Award, which is basically the Nobel Prize of Statistics. And that was the first time it was ever given for building software tools rather than proving complex mathematical theorems. Now you should know the R community has a very specific cultural quirk. It is famously, sometimes brutally, rigorous. They maintain the CRN repository, which involves manually reviewing thousands of packages. The standards are so high, and the early mailing lists were so notoriously strict that users coined a brand new verb, to Ripley. Named after Brian Ripley, an Oxford professor and a notoriously strict R core member, it meant getting a sharp, highly technical, very public rebuke for a badly formulated question or a code error. It could be a bit hostile, sure, but it's exactly what maintained a standard of quality that very few other programming ecosystems can match today.
Section 4. Escaping the static PDF. For most of its early life, R had one major bottleneck. You could do the most beautiful, rigorous analysis in the world, but it would just get buried in an academic PDF. Data scientists were doing this incredible interactive work, and then having to flatten it all into static JPEG screenshots for a PowerPoint presentation. But that changed dramatically over the next decade. In 2012, the Shiny framework came along and allowed statisticians to build fully interactive web apps. During COVID, epidemiologists used Shiny to track real-time case counts for health departments. But, it still required servers. Fast forward to 2022 with Quarto for seamless publishing across formats, and then the massive leap in 2025, WebR. WebR compiled R to run directly in a web browser using WebAssembly. No server, no complex installation, just fully interactive R dashboards running seamlessly in a tab. R had finally escaped the PDF completely.
Section 5. R versus general-purpose Python. And this brings us to the elephant in the room. Every few years, someone loudly declares that R is dead or dying, usually pointing to the unstoppable rise of AI and Python.
Now, what's really interesting here is the contrast. Yes, Python appears in roughly 69% of data science jobs. It's a general-purpose giant, and importantly, it's the absolute default for AI coding assistants like ChatGPT. The AI writes Python, newcomers learn Python, and the cycle just reinforces itself. But when you look at pure statistical rigor, R sits at 33% of jobs, and it retains absolute dominance in its niche. It is essentially mandatory in high-stakes fields like bioinformatics and FDA clinical trials. It's really a tale of broad general utility versus deep, uncompromised specialized mastery.
Section 6. The irreplaceable statistical backbone. That deep specialization is exactly why R staged such an incredible comeback, surging back into the TOOB top 10 rankings by early 2026. So the crucial point is that R is deeply embedded across these critical industries. In genomics, the Bioconductor project sees 45 million downloads a year. It's simply the standard. In pharmaceuticals, the PharmVerse initiative ensures R-based submissions are accepted by the FDA. In data journalism, the BBC and Financial Times rely on custom R packages to reach hundreds of millions of readers. Even as major corporate backers occasionally shift focus toward Python, R survives because the precise analysis it produces simply cannot be easily replicated by anything else when the stakes are literally life and death.
Ultimately, R wasn't built by computer scientists guessing what data analysts might want, and it wasn't built by some massive corporation trying to sell a product. It works because it was built by statisticians for statisticians. It perfectly solves the exact, highly complex problems it was designed for. And that is exactly why it outlasted the corporate paywalls of the 90s and why it's going to continue to thrive alongside the AI boom of today. It's pretty incredible when you step back and think about it. From the safety of the medications you take that pass those rigorous clinical trials to the news charts that completely inform your understanding of a global pandemic. How much of our modern world safely runs on a piece of unpaid infrastructure named as a joke between two guys in a hallway and just given away for free? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope you never look at a data chart the exact same way again.